You're listening to the Rogers Sporting Goods Podcast with Patrick Fisher,
Chandler Smith,
and Josh from Outdoor Limits.
In this podcast, we'll touch on everything from gear to ducks to deer, turkey and fishing. From field to table, let's dive in. Yeah, I went up there we left what is today? I got back this last Friday. We came back a day early, but it was fun. Almost to the Canada border. We're like 25 minutes from International Falls. And we want to go smallmouth fishing. Inevitably, you catch all them line cutter pike
Yep.
that you'd never want to mess with. Half your lures get lost.
Yeah.
You always got to bring extra because you just know you're going to catch some.
Take the cheap stuff.
And they just like snip, snip, snip. And then usually I'm like, I'm not going to net him. I always have a pair of pliers. I'll just reach down, grab the lure, and shake them off. And then that wasn't working. So
Is that how you got?
We started netting.
Is that how you got stuck?
Yeah, and my brother nets one. It was like our last morning, and it didn't start off well. And so he catches a pike, and I net it, and I bring it in, and I don't know if I think he still had tension because he was holding up his rod and instead of letting it down. And I reached down. I had a crankbait on there, so I got 2 treble hooks hanging off the bottom of this crankbait, and I reached down with the pliers. One popped off and went into my hand.
Ouch.
Past the barb, which has never happened before, so that was my first experience with that. That was fun.
Yeah.
And the other half still in the fish, and the fish starts flopping around. So I'm just screaming, help, help. My dad finally realizes what's going on, grabs the fish. But I numbed it up my left, which I used.
Wounds?
Yeah, barely. You can just see where the hook went in, and we popped it out. But
You pushed it out the other side? No braid trick?
I didn't do like the line trick.
Yeah.
I've seen it done, but I didn't know how to do it, and I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I was more worried about my dad. He grabs the pliers just smiling at me. I'm like, calm down, doctor. He's like, it'll hurt. I'll just yank it out real quick. Which, yeah, it would have been fine, but backing that barb out would have sucked. So
it would have.
I grabbed some ice and numbed it, and then just pushed the hook all the way through.
Pushed it through. Yeah.
Cut the barb. And put some paper towels on there and my glove over it, and we went back fishing.
There you go.
Yeah, but golly, it was fun though.
Did you get into smallmouth?
Lots of smallmouth.
And I saw some walleye.
I think my biggest was pushing 5 pounds.
That's good.
It was 4.5.
That's fun.
Something like that. But I think the 2 pounders, something like that.
They're
they
strong
still
fish.
fight like crazy. Few walleye and a couple sauger and tons of pike. Them pike, which they're great eating, but we just didn't mess with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen a microscopic image of their teeth, like compared to a walleye tooth, a pike or a muskie's tooth is like, it has a razor edge on one side of it. It is actually sharpened like on the edge, and a walleye tooth just looks like a cone. It doesn't even look sharp under a microscope.
Yeah. Don't want to lip either one of them fish.
No.
Coming up out of the. I've known a few people that it's dark, especially like walleye at night, and they'll reach down to grab the fish, not knowing that they caught a walleye, or they weren't fishing for walleye or whatever. You find out real quick. That hurt.
Yeah.
Go for the gills.
Yeah. But it was a good time. The trip is long. That 10-hour drive, you just 35 until it ends in Duluth, and then you cut over a little bit, but and then trying to pull a boat through St. Paul, Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
And all the traffic. So crazy. Whipping in and out. You get a 20-foot boat behind you. And then we're the only ones up there in a flat bottom. Everybody's staring at you like, what are these Missouri catfish noodlers? What are they doing up here with their camo Sea Arc?
Yeah.
Like everybody up there is in their low or Lund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got their little kicker motor on there.
Yep.
For walleye fishing, which is fine. I'd love to get into a mess of walleye, but I'm more I get bored too easy, so I want to be out there casting all day instead of trolling or jigging for walleye.
It's like the northern crappie, basically. I mean, it's like crappie fishing here.
Mm-hmm.
It seems
Yeah.
like just kind of slow, and they don't really fight hard. They're just but they're good to
Right.
eat.
Oh, they're so good. And the water's so clean up there. It's just crystal clear. There's no garbage, really. It's nice. You didn't compared to some of the lakes down here.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, yeah, I don't know if I want to eat much out of there. Hot.
Yeah.
Warm. We had good weather. Had a fire one night that must have started, and it was on Tuesday, and by that night you couldn't see across the lake all the smoke and all them wildfires that get there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Canada. Obviously, they got a bunch in Northeast. You know, that's been all over the news. This one was just across International Falls. But anyways,
What was it?
it was a good time.
2 years ago that Minnesota was having a lot of big wildfires.
I think so. And was it, it's funny, we started talking about wildfires on the way back. And now I can't remember what my dad called it. I can't remember if it was Iowa or Minnesota. And I'm talking way back in the day, like the Great Fire or whatever it was called. And it was like one of the biggest fires ever in the country. And it killed I'm pretty sure it was Minnesota. And it wiped out half the state, just pockets of fires and all. And back then, it's not like they had that started from the railroad, and a spark set off a fire. And then, it's not like you have fire departments now. So we're talking way back in the day,
Yeah.
Don't
know it's coming, and
it killed.
can't put it out.
Was he talking like 1894 fire? The Great Hinckley Fire?
It should be.
Minnesota, September 1894.
It sounds about right.
200,000 acres and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, for them,
Official death was 418.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that.
Which the only thing
Google has, though.
me and Dad were talking, you're in Minnesota with all them lakes and stuff. I'm just jumping in the lake until
You'd think, yeah.
yeah,
They just
you would
they'll
think.
sneak
But-
up on you at night,
right,
though.
you couldn't fight fires back then like you would now. It's not like you got pumper trucks
Yeah, I don't know.
rolling out, putting out grass fires.
Yeah, 1894 is probably a horse and wagon.
Horse-drawn wagons with buckets of water.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was a good trip, though.
Pat,
But,
who do we have here today on the podcast?
Yeah, so to my left, Ryan, and to his left, Casey, and they are from Backcountry Hunters and Anglers organization. Kind of started a few months ago, a couple months ago maybe, reached out, and I don't know, they just, I think what that organization is, what it stands for, the things they have going on, is super interesting. They're from the Missouri chapter, so I think last I looked, there's a couple chapters in Canada. Most of the United States, each state has a chapter. I think there's a few in the Northeast, I believe, that doesn't have a chapter, which when we get into, if you want to start a chapter, we'll get you set up. So if you want to join BHA, you can, but we'll get into that. But yeah, so I wanted to bring him in and really talk about some stuff that maybe people don't hear about a lot, or issues going on in the outdoor world that us as hunters, right? We're checking limits and season dates and when can I go hunting, things like that. This is more the stuff that maybe we should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
That's not out. It's out there, but I don't know if everybody's searching it, So we got some good info, and so they represent our Missouri chapter, and so we're gonna get into some local discussions that deal with public land stuff and things like that. Some national news stuff we just had come out, so yeah, should be a good time. And
So Ryan, where are you from in Missouri?
I'm from right here in Kansas City area.
You're in Kansas City area,
Yeah.
and then in Casey, you're in Lee Summit, Kansas City area.
Yeah. Grew up in Independence.
Independence, gotcha.
Yeah, I grew up in Parkville, born and raised here.
Oh, yeah?
Moved away for a few years and found my way back.
Yeah,
old jet's gonna land on the roof.
yeah. We'll see. I wonder if you can that picks up on the podcast.
That's funny.
But you guys, waterfowl, deer hunter, turkey hunter, hiker,
And I grew up hunting small game. I killed my first like squirrels and rabbits at 6.
Yeah.
I killed my first deer at 12, and I've been doing it ever since. One thing I really haven't gotten into a ton is waterfowl, just because that's not how I grew up. Ran snow goose a couple of times just on guided hunts. But I killed a couple of ducks up in Kodiak a couple of years ago, and that was really cool. They're great to hang on the wall. But other than that, I haven't waterfowl hunted much. I love eating duck. I'd be interested.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm generalist. I'll chase about everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up hunting farms just east of here along 24 Highway. My family's from Waverly area.
Yeah.
And then did a lot of hunting down in the Ozarks for whitetail and quail and dove were kind of my primary game. Since then, added some more. Just like Casey, I haven't gotten into the waterfowl game yet. Tried getting myself invited a few times, but people are pretty selective and pretty protective of bringing out the new guy. So
Yeah, it can be that way sometimes. It sucks. It shouldn't, but
yeah,
like,
plus
like
I was
deer hunting.
Yeah, I was told
It's a secret spot.
yeah.
if I want to get into waterfowl, I just better expect to be poor. So.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I'd say it's one of the. I mean, I don't. Yeah, it definitely is one of the more expensive things if you go full into it.
Yeah. But you could go into the store and say, Patrick, I need to go duck hunting this weekend. How do I do
Hey,
it?
can
And
you
he'll
get-
be like,
"What's the minimal I need?"
he'll get you out the door.
Yeah, I
and
think
you-
I can get you out the door. Pretty minimalistic. But when you dive into it, if you're full on and you got a boat or decoys, dogs, water and land decoys, and you got stuff to
Trailers
haul
and-
your
yeah.
decoys and trailers and yeah.
It gets,
The shotgun you need, the ammo.
I think the one time I tried to DIY it, I tried early season teal. I got half a dozen teal decoys and a call and
Yeah.
like rubber boots, and I gave it a shot. I didn't do very well,
Yeah.
but I tried.
Yeah.
And that was a cheap way to get into it.
Sure. Yeah.
and you don't need much really.
No, you don't need
really
much.
a spinner. The spinner is the big thing on
Yeah,
the teal.
I think the main thing there
and
is
finding
just-
where the teal want to be.
Yeah, be in the right spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you just go sit out on the lake. But that's what we've talked about that before, Shannon. Like, I mean, if you just pick a spot and you're like, I've seen ducks fly over this area,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that, But yeah, you can come in. We'll get you set up and get you into waterfowl. Just another expense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be a few dozen decoys.
Yeah.
Waiters, weights.
Yeah, I got
Oh
I got in
my
the
gosh.
waterfowl late. I grew up bass fishing and fishing and freshwater fishing my whole life. My grandfather has a lake house on Lake Fork, and so I go down there all the time in the summer and just fish. And then that's how I got interested in more of the outdoors, and then the deer hunting, and then the duck hunting came last, kind of thing. So,
Yeah,
but Pat's a big bow hunter.
yeah. That's probably my passion.
Got
is
them
bow,
Iowa
bow
roots.
hunting. Yeah, and them Iowa roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grew up deer hunting, but I love waterfowl hunting. I'll go once or twice a year. I say I love it, and I only go once or twice a year. I really do love it, but I
We'll
always
probably
tell
go more
people
this year.
When I have an empty bow tag in my pocket, though, it's hard for me not to keep doing that.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I like bow
for
hunting
me,
for sure.
it's more than just the bow hunt itself. Even not being successful, that's just kind of my my church per se.
Yeah.
Sitting up there in my stand, quiet,
Yeah.
thinking about stuff.
Yeah. Robert
Yeah.
Ruark has a quote in one of his books. It's like he's never found God in a church. He finds God in the outdoors.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
It's
church.
just a
Same
great
thing.
you just gather your thoughts, think about life, and listen
And
to
when you're
us.
going to run
Listen
out of
to
snacks.
I run out of snacks quick, so we all know that.
Did you guys go
My
to the
snacks are gone by sunrise.
That happens. Did you guys go to the Heartland premiere last weekend? Heartland Bowhunter had
I
their
saw
premiere.
that. I didn't go
I
to the
saw
premiere.
it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
know
saw
they're
the
sponsored by another big box store, so
I was gone,
Or bigger.
but I did see about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like those guys.
That shows it's a good show.
I grew up with Mike, so yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had a
He's a good
couple
dude,
of
really.
them come in the store.
Oh yeah.
One that used to come in quite a bit. I can't remember what his name is for the life of me.
On the bow hunting side or on the waterfowl side?
On the bow hunting, well, I think on the bow hunting
Yeah.
side, yeah. Like you guys were talking, it was funny. They were saying, Chandler, remember the old story, you know.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like the smell, you know. It's like the soft plastics.
The lighting in there.
The lighting.
Yep. Old one on 291. Yeah, I can smell that
Yeah.
store still.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of soft
Yeah.
plastic.
That was the first time I ever saw a manufactured deer stand.
Oh,
Before
really?
that was, I grew up old 2x4s hammered on the side of a tree.
I've hunted out of some of them.
I saw that and I was like, that's a chair. And there's a cushion on it. Like,
What's
that was a
going
game
on?
changer for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's got a rifle rest.
Yeah.
I don't have to use hammer and nails.
Yeah.
Put up my stand. Yeah, for sure. Boy, they've come a long ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everything has. It's all.
Yeah, now we're up there.
Changing.
We look like loggers in trees. We're up here in saddles and ropes and
I
all
know.
that stuff. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. What is, you know, so I guess to set the stage, like what BHA is, what the, you know, what the organization is, kind of tell us a little bit about that, like just, you know, the generalized, if people go to, you know, backcountryhunters.org, you know, what are they going to see? What are we staying for? What's the, you know, I guess,
Yep.
foundation of it?
Well, so we're a 501c3, so a nonprofit that is focused specifically on a key issue or key issues. And those for us are public access to hunting and fishing. So what our goals are is around making sure land access is available, water access is available. So if you hunt, you fish, find yourself out on public or find yourself maybe hunting a family farm that's going to be getting sold and you're going to be losing private access, having a look at that public access proportion of it or perspective of it, I guess, is, that's what we're there for, is to try and continue to protect it as well as get new areas of access for hunting and fishing throughout the entire North America.
Yeah, I was looking, gosh, I can't remember if I wrote it down or not, but like Montana, I wrote down, like you talk about access and opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think Montana has a little over 2 million acres of public land that's blocked from the public access.
Yep.
So it's surrounded by private land, and you just can't get to it. I mean, that's a lot of public land. That's not, you know what I think of? I think of Yellowstone.
Oh, geez.
I know, but that was the first thing I thought of, Montana. But like, it kind of makes sense. So you get all these cattle ranches, or you get, you know, all this private land, and it's blocking all this public land.
And that is probably something somebody can relate to now. Like I've only watched a little bit of Yellowstone,
Yeah.
but one of the first seasons, there's like a water access issue, right? They dynamite the creek and move it. We would care about that.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, that's kind of BHA. That's I think that's the foundation, is the access, the opportunity for outdoor enthusiasts, and that's hunters and I think non-hunters alike. It's not just getting out there hunting. We're talking about everything from camping, hiking, fishing, as well as hunting.
Mm-hmm.
If you like the outdoors, BHA, that's kind of their standpoint, is we want everybody to be able to enjoy the public land that's available to you.
Yep.
And
And touching on what you're saying about Montana and that 2 million acres, in the entire United States, there's nearly 10 million acres that's inaccessible, that's public land.
That's
So 10
so
million
much.
acres of our nation's public land, and it's technically accessible if you have a helicopter. You can fly in, drop down by helicopter, have that helicopter pick you up,
because
and
it's
take you
been
back
built
out.
all the way around with private land, and there's just chunk of public.
Yeah, and there's a history and nuance to it that honestly I don't have that full depth. There's podcast after podcast out there that's dove into it a little bit, but yeah, honestly, it came from the railroads and the way the railroads were, developed across the West. It was split between public and then the railroads owning the land, and then as it sold, it just kind of became a checkered model throughout a lot of the Western states, and so it's a model that just continued, and then through land acquisitions, maybe areas that had been open slowly get closed off, or easements are lost, things like that. So that's a lot wrapped up in that, but it's a thing that we continue to work on, trying to get those easements, continue, the ones that are there, continue to make sure they're protected,
Right.
and try getting access to the other ones.
Yeah. That, well, I don't have a helicopter.
I don't have one either.
If you
I
had a
don't,
helicopter, you could buy a chunk of that 10 million acres.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was going to say is, you know, the people that develop around it or whatever, you almost, and we might have alluded to this before we got on here, is it's almost like that public land that the people didn't pay for that bought all that land. It's almost like it just becomes theirs for free.
By
Like-
proxy.
Yeah, like, oh, it's landlocked, and so I'm just going to use it as my own.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying you can't use it as public land, but
You just can't get to it.
it's almost no one else is allowed to get to it, and you got, you know, whoever, whether it's a town or, you know, farms being built around it or whatever, and now you've got this giant chunk of public land that's available to anybody, and no one can get to it.
Yep.
I got to walk through your yard.
Yep.
And then that's a whole nother thing, which I think we're going to touch on. That's kind of what you're talking about. This, you know, if you the best way to explain it, I think, is like a checkerboard, you know,
Yep.
and it, you know, we start talking about corner crossing, which is the term people have come up for, but, you know, and how do we get to this public land and all these millions of acres out there without, you know, intruding on someone's private land that they do have, which has been a big topic, especially for the state of Missouri.
Yep. So interestingly, the state of Missouri, we don't have much in terms of that checkered model of inaccessibility. That is mostly impacting western states. But, you know, currently there's a lawsuit that recently went through, and the kind of the backstory on it is there's some Missouri guys that headed out west to do some elk hunting. They checked in with the local game wardens. They checked in with the local sheriff's department, and actually built a custom ladder out of, you know, out of an old aluminum ladder, packed it into the backcountry, set it up at one of these corners to actually cross from public land section to another public section, and then continue to do some hunting. Well, this bumped up to a rather wealthy landowner who didn't like that. So when the guys came back out, that landowner had the local sheriff there to write them trespassing tickets. So that's gone through. The BHA was one of the funders of a basically fundraising to help them battle this wealthy landowner who was bringing this lawsuit against these gentlemen. And so Wyoming chapter BHA was one of the spearheaders because it did start in Wyoming. Nationally, the national BHA was able to contribute over $150,000 to that campaign, to that lawsuit in defense of it. And yeah, we just recently learned that the court did decide the guys were in the right to do what they did. And naturally, as we know, within the American court system, there's going to be a couple of rounds probably of appeals, but you know, it's trending in the direction that we want to see it. So getting that access back.
Pretty interesting because they didn't set foot on the private
used
land,
Yeah.
but their
airspace.
airspace. They crossed their left elbow and right elbow might have crossed into the airspace of the private land, but they never touched foot on it.
Yep.
So that's just crazy. And it went through criminal and then civil, and then now is there appeal going to happen?
Yep, that's
on
what
the
we've
civil?
heard is there will be, but yeah, it was criminal trespass was the original lawsuit.
And then that got thrown out.
Yep, the criminal charge got thrown out, and then it went to civil. I've got the quote from the judge right here. It says, corner crossing on foot in the checkerboard pattern of land ownership without physically contacting private land and without causing damage to private property does not constitute an unlawful trespass. And that's from Judge Scott Scavdall, who was presiding on that civil case.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. I wanted to pull this up. I'm sorry.
So that was last fall hunting season or last big game, or is that 2
It was
years
a couple
ago?
years
A couple
ago.
years ago.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just going. Yeah, it's been on for a while.
Court litigation takes forever.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
But like Ryan said, is we don't really have that pattern here in Missouri in our land, but it affected Missouri hunters.
Yeah.
And I just found out last week I drew a Wyoming antelope tag, so
Okay.
it might affect me this year, and I might go hop a corner. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can.
This was so we were talking about one of the things that case had brought up, or the gentleman from Missouri, or their lawyer, whoever brought it up, talked about the unlawful enclosures, or the Unlawful Closures Act. I'm probably not saying it exactly correctly, but unlawful, let's see, Chapter 25, unlawful enclosures or occupancy obstructing settlement or transit. So that's one of the precedents that they brought up. That's actually a law. And so I wanted to read that just so people. So, obstruction of settlement on or transit over public lands. No person by force, threats, intimidation, or by any fencing or enclosing or any other unlawful means shall prevent or obstruct or shall combine and confederate with others to prevent or obstruct any person from peaceably entering upon or establishing a settlement or residence on any tract of public land subject to settlement or entry under the public land laws of the United States, or shall prevent or obstruct free passage or transit over or through the public lands. So, provided this section shall not be held to affect the right or title of persons who have gone upon, improved, or occupied said lands under the land laws of the United States, claiming title thereto in good faith. So, like we're talking about, this guy, obviously he had a fence, and they couldn't get to the public land without going through his fence and touching his ground. So they did the latter, which I didn't look up a picture, but and they used the airspace. So
and I can't speak to for sure that there was a fence there.
I think there was, fairly certain.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't speak to that, but
even if there
wasn't,
you still, trying to get to it without getting
physically.
But I believe there was a fence in this case.
I'm pretty sure,
which under that, you're blocking the access to it by closing it off with a fence.
If I were going to play devil's advocate on that law, because legalese is hard, you got to read it and you got to understand the meaning of everything.
Right.
That chunk of property was obviously prohibited to settlement, so they weren't going there to settle. It talks about passage through. Well, they weren't looking to pass through it really either. They were looking to access it to hunt.
Yeah.
And that's probably what the counter would be. It's like, well, they weren't traveling, they weren't passing through.
We just weren't. Yeah.
Yeah. But we also know that, lawyers are not maybe our favorite people all the time, and they're looking to make a bunch of money. But if I were going to play devil's advocate, that's what their lawyer might argue in that law. As they weren't looking to pass through. They were looking to go hunt, and they were going to come back out the same way.
Right.
So
it's still, so in their effort, they at least won this first battle, or whatever you want to call it. There's an expectation that there's going to be an appeal.
Yeah.
More than likely, at least from everything that I've heard.
Yeah. Yep. And I think from everything we've heard, they'll win that appeal as well, but it's a long process.
Yeah. But this is still a topic, when we boil it down to just the simplicity of it, again, is, okay, if there is some landlocked public land, how do we make it available for everyone to enjoy?
Yeah.
We don't have helicopters. We can't just rappel down in there. So is it either, they come in and part of your private land, and that's a whole nother legality. Yep. We're going to make an easement that everybody gets to use, even though you own that land. Like if, this was the corner in this room here, and they put an easement in here, a little road or whatever that people could use, whether it's a walking trail or a gravel road or,
I think it's going to be one of those things. It's going to be a multi-year ongoing battle, probably. I'd anticipate, because it's not, it's federal land, but it's every state. Every state has different, rules and regulations around their, land laws.
Yeah, easement laws.
Yeah, so it's just going to be a process.
Because there are easements, like you see easements to properties like for sale. Like you'll be looking for a farm with a house on it or whatever, and it's like there's an easement off the road to get to it that kind of goes through someone else's.
So those easements are either previously established. A lot of times it may be a history of a forest road. Access for the Forest Service back to it. That's a public easement. And we've even had issues where BHA was involved in the past where some of those were getting shut down by a local sheriff, which again would block off and essentially turn it into a landlocked public land area. But then also there's agreements. And so as we move forward, like what does that look like? That's a ever evolving process of can we get those agreements? What do those look like? Are there nonprofits, whether it's BHA or RMEF, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, or other public access issues or organizations, or hunting organizations that can work to buy those easements or those sections of land that would then open up public spaces. So I think it's going to be a combination of all of that that's really going to ultimately hopefully get us in that direction of opening up a lot of this, nearly 10 million acres.
Yeah. What's a pipe dream that would be a lot less complicated was what if the state or the feds or whoever could buy 10 square feet at that corner and turn that into the easement or into the public land. It's 10 square feet. You can walk through that without a problem. But that's probably not going to happen, but it'd be amazing.
Buy even tax adjustments on that land. There's
And
a lot of different ways.
Because people are going to say, well, now my land's valued at this, or it's
Okay, what's your cost per acre? I just bought 10 square feet of it, and
I'm going to overpay it.
Yeah. So
they're going to overpay for that corner.
Right.
I think, and I can't remember if we were talking about this back in the day, Chandler, when we were bringing up blue laws, but remember that case with the waterway? And I think this happened in Missouri too, but my memory is fading.
I don't remember. That was a while ago.
So what happened is a guy was floating down. We get a lot of streams and things. People float down. So he put in, I think he put in off a roadway where you could park, put in, floated down. Well, that stream went through some guy's property.
Yeah.
He didn't enter from the guy's property. He entered from a public access point. To get to another point. The stream happened to go through his property.
Yeah.
The guy has cattle. He put up one of those, you see him, the cattle fences that go through the stream.
Yeah, a lot of times they'll use like a piece of tin on the bottom of it or something. Yeah.
And then you see the fence sticking up. And, and the guy floating moved it, lifted it up so he could get through. There was a case on it. That guy ended up winning because he put in from one public access.
Yep.
He didn't put in on the guy's property to get in, and he never left the
high water mark.
The high water mark of the bank.
Yep.
Yeah. Missouri has a navigable waterways law.
But that's kind of it's kind of the same thing. We're talking about water, not waterways. It's kind of the same topic, so to speak. That's another issue is waterways, especially for waterfowlers or things like that want to get to.
So I'm local law enforcement in the Kansas City area. I've actually had a call like that where somebody called on a trespasser on their property, and the guy was walking in the creek. And I had a conversation with him, and I emailed him the law about navigable waterways. And the dispute comes down to what's definition of navigable.
Right.
Is it wet year round? This happened to be a creek that dried up in the summer. I would argue that's probably not a navigable waterway anymore.
Right.
So you probably need to watch your P's and Q's on that and really learn what a navigable waterway is.
Yep. Yeah. But speaking on that, that's actually one of the things BHA has been involved with the River Access Coalition down in Christian County. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Paddler's Guide to Missouri that the Conservation Department puts out each year. Or not each year, sorry. You can go to the
rings a bell, but it's not something that
Department of Conservation website. They have had a number of issues of it, but it's a full waterways, floatable. Where are the put-ins? what's the water markers, what's even the flow rates based off rain, things like that. So like what's the drop of them. So within that, so Paddler's Guide to Missouri, the Finley River down in Christian County, the zero marker put in, so at the very start of that river for floating is at the Linden Lure access point,
Okay.
which historically it's had a road, public road, right into the creek bed. That's where it looks like, it's been there for hundreds of years. History goes back, like I said, 100 years of public utilization and access. A road even that was maintained utilizing FEMA money after some of the flooding that happened in southern Missouri. And during, I believe it was around just a few years ago, a neighboring landowner put in a cattle gate with some of those big concrete barricades to block that road right across the public road, right across the county road. And so this was one of the things that came to our attention. We've been involved, like I said, working with the River Access Coalition, which is a nonprofit that actually stemmed and became an organization because of this exact entry point. So it was a lawsuit. We had a River Access Coalition, basically the public had to sue to get the road opened back up. And so that's one that was, it was one, access was reopened here about a year ago, a little over a year ago. Yeah, just one of those things, like it was the public, we went to the county, we pulled history, like, hey, it's on the maps. You've been utilizing FEMA money to maintain this road. And it just became a big issue where essentially some of the commissioners on the board down there in that county at the time, I don't think they're still on the board, but they said, I'm friends with the landowner, I can't be involved in this. And so they turned a blind eye. So instead of serving the public, they were serving a private interest.
Yeah.
But with that, when you close that off, that zero, that first put in, well, the next access point is about 7-8 miles down. So you just lost 7 floatable miles of a river that you could fish, of a river you could take your family on, of a swimming hole that was known for, that's where a lot of people grew up learning how to swim down in that county. So yeah, that's one of the things that we did fundraising for, did online auction for here a couple years ago to help raise money as a part of that lawsuit.
Yeah, and we do get questions sometimes from our membership and other people about where our money goes, because we do raise money at most of our events through raffles or whatever. We donated several $1,000s to the Missouri hunters up at the Wyoming Corner Crossers issue. We've donated a lot of money to the Linden Lure Access Fund and the River Access Coalition. So we aren't lawyers ourselves, so we give money to the people that are going to fight that.
And actually, I think if people want to see where, I mean, at least a lot of it was shown, I think it's on the website.
Yep.
Yeah.
I believe there's a page that'll show you, hey, this much was donated here, this,
Yep. And
And
that's
kind of keep track of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going in anybody's pocket.
And even
Right.
beyond our website, I'm we're the Missouri, we're a show me state, so you gotta check it.
Right, yeah.
GuideStar is one of those nonprofit organizations that actually grades and ranks nonprofits, whether it be any type of nonprofit, could be a higher education, so a college institution, a 501c3, like any organizations like that. GuideStar is one that I highly recommend. Go look and see where we rank on that, because we have currently a platinum level in terms of our money, and not only like where our money goes, but how much of the donated money goes to the effort versus how much gets eaten up by administrative costs and overhead and all the things that you start to see, okay, well then what kind of salaries are some of these executives of some nonprofits making?
You see that and you're like, man,
Yeah, you saw articles
they're
like that.
becoming millionaires.
Yeah.
Like, was it like the big Haiti earthquake several years back or quite a while back? They were
Right.
talking about like every dollar you donate, only like 2 or 3 cents actually
Right.
trickles down to help. That's not
And
us.
obviously there's costs. There's a website. There's things, but what you're saying is, I mean, is it 80 cents on the dollar? Is it all of it? But a lot of it's going to,
Yep. And again, most of us, we're a grassroots organization. You touched on it. So we are throughout all the United States and Canada. We may have a couple of provinces up in Canada and a couple of states we're still not in. I'm pretty sure we're not in Hawaii yet. But at every state level, so we have the national BHA, and then every state has its own chapter that's run by volunteers. And so I'm a volunteer, Casey's a volunteer, our board, anybody that comes out and helps with events, we're all volunteers.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, as you guys were saying, you still have your jobs that you
Yeah.
go
Yep.
to.
We have
Day
day
jobs.
jobs.
So,
Or night jobs in my case.
but it's a passion, right? It's
Yep.
just something that you feel strongly about, so you
Mm-hmm.
get into. I don't. So one thing I wanted to bring up. So as we talk about issues that BHA as a whole. We talked about access and opportunity. We talked about the public lands and waters, and obviously a big part's habitat conservation, and I think you were talking about cleanups and
Yep, we've done
so there's
cleanups.
things like that too. We don't have to get super deep into this. So one thing is the fair chase also is an
Yep.
issue. So the big topic right now is drones.
Yeah.
So that was brought up. So at least from what I could read on BHA's website is they're a proponent of banning drones for scouting and hunting, both.
Correct.
And I don't.
And
I'm going to play devil's
I didn't know
advocate
they
a
weren't
little
banned
bit,
already. I mean, I just didn't.
and maybe they are.
Over a lot of public land, they are already
Yeah.
in Missouri.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But like private land too.
Mm.
Is that what we're saying as well? Like just as a whole, we'd kind of like drones to be banned for scouting and hunting as a whole, or
I can't speak a ton to that
Yeah.
because I haven't honestly seen our stance on it quite
Right,
yet.
yeah.
But I know that over public land in Missouri, generally that is not allowable. MVC
Right.
doesn't allow it over their land.
Sure.
We're starting to see a lot of states ban like trail cameras, like completely.
Yeah,
Kansas
we've talked
just
about
started one,
that.
right? If you're thinking you want to ban trail cams or cell phone trail cams, and you kind of got to do drones too. Similar.
Yeah, and I've taken. So my stance on it, just as a quick look, without doing an in-depth research on drones, and Chandler, yours might be a little bit different than mine, but so well, I can see the public land part. I get, because what happens is, there's a lot of public places too. You can't do the trail cams. You can't put out mineral licks and things like that. I understand that to a degree, because what happens is more and more people do it, and then they just leave their trail cameras out, and then they just leave these bait sites, and then they leave their stands up all year round, and they don't take them in and out like you're supposed to, or a ground blind, and pretty soon that public land, we're doing a cleanup because we've got piles of steel and
Yeah.
things like that. So I get it. The drone thing, too. When you talk about fair chase, it's a hot topic.
Yeah.
You're flying a drone around, and especially if you're doing it at and you got infrared or thermal or some of these
Yeah.
drones, and it's like,
How much money you
okay,
got? Yeah.
So what's going on here. I do like it though, as a recovery tool.
Sure.
Which I know some places I think allow it. You have to be careful,
Yeah.
because are you using it for recovery, or are you scouting at the same time? So I think on my stance of that would be, as the company, whoever, like, if you were a company, although you could just go buy a drone, but like say you hired me out, you have a deer, you're like, hey, right, because that's one thing we want to do is we want to recover any game that we
Yeah.
shoot. We want to make sure we didn't have a bad shot and it's injured, which inevitably has happened.
Yep.
So we want to do everything in our power. Whether it's dogs using hounds, or drones is a real good way, especially if it's right after the shot. There's heat. Using that thermal imagery. Say you hired me out, I came out, I can look for you. You can't look.
Sure.
I can lead you where to go. That way you're not, as the customer, using my drone footage as a scouting tool.
Yeah.
That's kind of one way around that. Although, people find loopholes and, oh yeah, there it is right there. But yeah, so I don't know. I guess I'd have to dive into it more, because drones are a thing now.
Yeah.
And they're just, it's a tool that's out there that we're going to have to come to a head with and figure out how we want to do this.
And they are very cool, and aerial imagery is really neat and very helpful to us. I would say, honestly, just get OnX if you want aerial imagery, because you can get your topo overlays, you can get your lays of the earth and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Recovery-wise, I can see that being useful in, like, north of here, northern Missouri. We got a lot of ag, we got a lot of fields. You get down to the Ozarks, you're not going to fly that drone through the oaks and
Yeah,
and
when
the
it's
cedars
a wooded, yeah.
It's just not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some deer, they get out in the field and die out in the middle of a CRP field that's, and it's like,
Yeah.
There'd be
Start
great.
grid searching.
Yeah,
and you
that'd
got to
be
start
great.
grid searching. And I get it, grid search sometimes works, but a lot
Sometimes it
of times,
doesn't.
though, it doesn't. And by the time you do find it, that deer's eaten up. There's nothing left.
Yeah.
So
Eating up, and you're mowing next year. You know,
and you're
something.
mowing the next year, and you're like, oh,
There it is.
there it is, and that happens a lot too. So yeah, it's a touchy subject. I wanted to bring up fair chase in general, and I think, most, if not every outdoor hunter believes in fair chase. I would hope.
Yep.
I know us four here at the table probably believe in fair chase.
Certainly.
Yeah, I'd
Come on,
say
Chandler, get on
Here
on
with-
board.
here within Missouri around fair chase is there was some attempts, here in Missouri just a few years ago, attempts to move high fence deer, deers in the high fence model over to the Department of Agriculture rather than staying under the Department of Conservation. So starting to try and delineate the same species between two different departments, start adding in a bunch of just
Yeah, the captive
Bureaucracy.
servitude or industry.
yeah.
Mhm.
So we, that's one where we completely believe that needs to stay under the model of conservation agencies, following that model of true fair chase.
Yeah. I do like, and this is private land, so it's totally separate. I like the trail cam use. I think it's a tool that hunters can use to, especially if you're someone, we all got jobs,
Yeah.
right? Your hunting time is limited. I don't have a lot of time off to go hunt. I also work in a hunting store, so when it's hunting season, that's our busiest time.
Yep.
So for me to take off, it's very limited. So especially like cell cams now, utilizing that as a tool to benefit me of, hey, this is a good time to go out.
And they are just really neat. Like some of my favorite trail cam pictures I've ever seen from our family property down south
Yeah.
was like great horned owls,
Oh, yeah.
thumping a rabbit at night. That's really cool.
Some
Or
of
the
these-
bobcats, like the stuff you never ever see.
No, yeah.
But it's really neat to know that it's there.
Yeah, you get some great wildlife pictures.
Yeah.
It's almost as much fun going
Yeah.
and checking that card.
And then you're like doe, doe, doe. Awesome, an owl.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're more pumped.
Yeah.
I had a bobcat there for a while. I get some great pictures. You put a trail cam in a creek bed,
Yeah.
and just because it's a natural, oh my gosh, I've seen, little otters, or I've seen a bobcat carrying a squirrel,
Yep.
bobcat carrying a rabbit, the bobcat with its, little
Kittens.
babies walking across the a tree that had fallen down. They're walking across. I've had a bald eagle. Owls are
Yeah.
super cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So
They're definitely good for environmental or species tracking,
Yeah.
population, not management per se, but having an understand of what species are in areas, which having a person sit out
Yeah.
there. So the trail cams, I've read a lot that they've been very beneficial in terms of
Yeah.
understanding management of
Sure.
species.
And it can decrease human impact on the landscape because we are not physically out there as often. We have something else out there. So animals and nature can behave more like nature wants to without our impact.
yeah, the tough part, like I brought up, is when you get to the public side. It's
Yep.
if we start allowing too many things, then what happens is it gets left out.
Yeah. Yeah. Private, all about it.
And
yeah.
then you're just, now we've got, and then arguments. I know that I've talked to agents in MDC and conservation, and they're like, we started letting people out here, and then everybody's arguing, and that was my trail camera, and now we're taking stolen reports, and and then it just creates a hassle that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
But anyways, so cool. All right.
Real quick, how many acres of landlocked land does Missouri have? I know we threw out the total 10 million, and then I think, what do you say, Montana had 2? 2
Montana
million?
was 2. I wrote it. I left my sheets in my office,
Oh,
and I can't remember.
It's a good question.
Unless you guys know off the top of your head.
I don't know the answer because we don't have like the grid pattern like out west does. And I know like our land again down in southern Missouri, we back up to some core engineer land on the back. Well, it's accessible, but only if you want to walk a couple miles from the access point. Yeah. So I can walk straight through our family land and get on public in a quarter mile. So just depends on your definition of access.
Yeah.
So I don't have numbers on the state in terms of landlocked, but what we see more close to home is the water access.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, the Finley River down in Linden Lure access was one that went away. We did win that back through lawsuit, so that's opened back up. But what we're actually starting to see now is throughout a lot of areas in Missouri, there's the low water bridges. And so across even some blacktop highways and things, there will be lower bridges that as they're improving, replacing on infrastructure, going through and actually building new bridges, the bridge design we've seen, which actually I have to look at every time, is Good Hollow in Taney County was one that was a trout fishing stream. The bridge built on that highway there is built in a manner where historically you had access. You could just pull off side of way, walk down, get on the river, and you can float. Again, these are all listed in the Paddler's Guide to Missouri as put in and take out areas. Well, they built the bridge so large and so high, steep embankments on the sides of it that took up the easement, you can no longer access it there.
Oh, yeah.
So every new bridge that's going in, if they follow that same model and we lose that, that same design, we're going to lose that access point. So again, you can start looking at, you lose one here, you lose another there. All of a sudden, you've lost over 100 miles of floatable river like that. So that's one thing we're working on right now, is trying to actually, neighboring states, Tennessee has it, Oklahoma has done it. Maryland, I believe, is another state they actually have as a part of bridge design, is actually walking paths for access, parking area along the side that's accounted for as a part of the bridge design, just so that people can continue to be able to put their kayaks and canoes in. We're not talking about huge boats or anything like that. We're talking floatable, put a canoe on, put a kayak on, and be able to fish those areas. Put a raft on there for fishing, for floating, having access for the public. So that's one thing we're actually working on right now, trying to get some stuff pushed through with a Conservation Federation of Missouri as well as MDC.
Cool. I didn't know about that issue, but I kayak a lot too. I do see that issue sometimes. Like I'm always concerned of where, like if I could stop at this bridge, if I could park and move a kayak down there legally, that type of stuff. So
new bridges are making it hard.
Yep. And then even to that same front, there's been a number of areas where a landowner will just put up on a public road that gives you the public access. They'll put up a no trespassing sign just to keep people away. Because you're going to be, we're typically law-abiding citizens. We're going to see a private land sign or no trespassing sign. We're going to follow the rules and be respectful. But when it starts turning a bit of a game and they're putting that up, and we're having to now start fact checking on Onyx or some other mapping service of like, well, no, this is actually public. Well, I want to check. I'm going to call up a department, NBC agent, Department of Conservation agent, or local county or whoever to find out and confirm. Yeah, that is a public road. So those are things we'd like to see, is even if it's illegally marked as private, I think, or if it's marked as private but it's actually public, I think there should be some laws to protect the public around that.
I was trying to look it up real quick, but you get a forum of everybody having disputes with landowners in Missouri.
Oh gosh, it gets,
you could really get in the weeds there.
Oh my gosh. And it's funny, you were talking about Onyx, and they had a story that came out on another website. They're talking about how they want to get all this public land unlocked.
And Onyx is generally great, but always trust but verify. I mean, you don't know if the satellite's off a couple of feet or whatever. So but Onyx has been great.
It's super, it's really reliable. But yes, you definitely want to double check. Make sure. So since you guys obviously are doing the Missouri chapter, so some news broke recently that I think, a lot of waterfowlers need to pay attention to, that I think we should dive into, that you guys brought up. This just came out June 6th, so, we're a couple weeks removed from this press release coming out in Missouri, but let's dive into that, especially for all you waterfowlers out there in the Missouri area, or you visit Missouri. And but
Yep.
anyways, let's dive into what came out June 6th.
So, as we understand it, June 6th, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife announced that they're going to be closing Swan Lake. It's a very well-known migratory waterfowling area just a couple hours east of here at Kansas City. And just due to staffing shortages, they are cutting out some of the access. They're cutting out hunting altogether, so not going to be allowed to hunt on that anymore moving forward, starting this fall here of 2023. So with that, that's one of the first things, we're working, BHA, of trying to first make people aware this is happening. And then also, we've had conversations with the land managers out there. What we understand the issue to be is they had a staffing of 12 allocated to it, and that staffing is getting cut down to 1 by this fall. And so just due to staff cutting, we're going to be losing that access for being able to hunt out there.
And is that something, do you think that's gonna, do you think this year's a lost cause, or are we, like, what do we do to try to get this
Well,
open? So it's staff is the main issue, because
Yep.
they got to have the help to.
And they got to have the budget resources there for it. And so we all have senators and we all have congressional members that have
Yeah.
email addresses and phone numbers, and
We got to flood them
just got to
with emails.
put them in there and just, put that in there enough, reach out. I hate to say we have to complain, but you got to complain. You got to be the squeaky wheel. Otherwise, you don't get the grease.
Yeah. I wonder if they're going to have any, is one thing that BHA has done, is there ways that you can set up like town hall meetings for leaders either in that area or whatever to listen, or things or go to, whatever county Swan Lake is in, you go to like their public, board meetings or whatever, where people can show up and.
Well, the Fish and Wildlife Department should have meetings around that as well, if they have any coming up. But sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It just depends on. But if they have any coming up, that's a thing that we try to promote through our social media. Try to get people there either in person, or if it's something that they can dial into, join virtually. But typically, it does require people being physically in the meeting to voice up their speak up their concerns.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yep.
It is.
It's pretty recent.
Is that, do you have any other big projects? Is that a big project for you guys, or anything that you want to bring some light on at the current moment?
Yeah. So that is one that's definitely high for
Yeah.
us. Again, it's right at our mission of loss of public hunting area. It takes time for these. We don't just dive in and start screaming at the top of our lungs. Like, we want to have an understanding of the issues. What are the potential path forwards? One thing I believe is if there's a problem, you try to come with a solution as well.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're working on right now. If we haven't already posted it, it's a statement of what our position is on it. Obviously, we disagree with it happening, but we're going to try to work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, maybe work with other organizations, nonprofits, and say, if it's a funding thing, is there ways that public money can be contributed to that?
No.
To help cover some of those costs and open it back up. But from an issues perspective, that's one of the biggest. I know I touched on the river access. That's one of the biggest. And then what we always say too is, we're volunteers here in each state. So when there's a public land or public waters access issue, how we're going to find out about it is going to be from some local resident of an area reaching out to us and communicating to us. Like Christian County, I don't live down there. Like, I'm not going to be the one to hear about it. The locals are. And so if I don't have, I have personal contacts down there. We've had, organizational members down there who reached out to us and said, hey, this is happening. Can y'all take a look? Sometimes we get where a person they trespass riding a horse down a creek bed, and they, ride a horse, or they're walking down a creek bed, and the next thing they're in the farmer's field. Like, that's not an issue of public access. That's an issue of trespass. Whereas if it's an issue of trespass or public access, that's what we need to know. Like, right here in Kansas City area, one of the things that we had happen just a few years ago was Blue River Parkway. Or the Blue River Parkway is essentially it's a river, Blue River. And so there's public park land all along both sides of the Blue River. And there was a local developer that was looking to put in a driving range. And they were working with Jackson County to sell the land as surplus land. And so it was really going under the radar. And actually another nonprofit, Urban Trail Co., which maintains and builds single-track trails.
Yeah, I ride mountain bike. I'm on Urban Trail Co. all the time.
Yeah. So they were out just maintaining trails, and they found all these surveying markers right over one of the areas of trail. And, you know,
BRP is pretty good for mountain biking.
Yeah,
so,
and it's great for fishing right there on Blue River too. And so because of that, you know, BHA, Urban Trail Co., other nonprofits were able to find out, well, why are there survey markers out here? Oh, it's because they're looking to potentially sell the land as surplus land, which there's surplus public land. Like, come on, we don't have that much laying around. Yeah. So we were able to call in, put a call out on our social media, get people to flood the not the legislators, but the county commissioner for Jackson County to say, hey, like, we completely oppose the sale of this surplus land. And we were able to stop that development for that driving range.
Really?
And that was happening right in the midst of COVID. So.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
So it's, again, you know, long story short is if you're having issues where it's truly an issue of the public is losing that easement, it's losing that a gate showed up on a public road that's been there for 100 years. Yeah. If there's all of a sudden you're seeing survey markers in your local park, whatever it is, BHA is there from trying to keep that access open.
Right.
Yeah. And for Swan Lake, I don't think we really have a plan just yet. This is so new.
Yeah.
It's a couple weeks in.
We're a couple weeks in. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're some months away from waterfowl season when people are going to start to recognize, what do you mean we can't go here this year? So
I'm sure it's going to ramp up.
Yeah, and we hope so. And like a big help with it, or help with us, is collaboration. So we like to work with other agencies because our Missouri chapter, I think we've got 350 members. Like, we're not huge compared to like Ducks Unlimited. Well, does Ducks Unlimited put any money towards Swan Lake to fund that habitat? And Ducks Unlimited cares about habitat management and waterfowl a lot. They also care about hunting. So getting other organizations like that involved to really start pulling some weight is where we kind of shine.
Gotcha.
So that's what we would like to do, I think.
Yeah,
on
that'd
this
be
one.
an interesting one to keep up on. Because our waterfowl weekend coming up, might be a buzz around the talk, because that's everybody knows about Swan Lake in this area. So.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's in the Golden Triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So you guys are talking about your guys' Missouri chapters, like social media. You guys have your own pages.
Yep, we do.
Each state has its own page. We try to communicate local events that we're doing, whether that be archery shoots, trap shoots. Pint nights are one of the big ways we do pint nights where meet at a local brewery, distillery, something like that, and just have some drinks and talk hunting, fishing.
Yeah.
Hunts coming up, hunts done, things like that, and just develop community within the region.
What are those handles? I mean, from the Missouri side at least, or is it?
We've got a Facebook and an Instagram, and you can find both if you just search Missouri BHA. I'll
Missouri
look up
BHA.
our
Gotcha.
Missouri handle real quick.
Yeah, Instagram we're Mo_BHA.
Gotcha.
And then Missouri Backcountry Hunters Anglers on Facebook. Iowa, Illinois. I mean, like I said, every state. You live in a state and you're listening to this, look up BHA. National BHA has it's a social media as well, so you can also get more of that higher level of like what's happening, not just at your state level, but at the national level, because there's a lot. There's a lot that's out there.
Yeah. We have collegiate programs. Several colleges have chapters. I don't know if we have any collegiate programs in Missouri. Like, I don't know if Mizzou has a chapter. I don't think they do.
Yeah, right now colleges, there's kind of an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Every 4 years, there's every year there's a new batch of students essentially.
And it's hard to maintain a program, if you're getting that much turnover. There's also on a national side an Armed Forces initiative. They have an Armed Forces chapter. That's actually our biggest chapter. It's
Really?
a bunch of people. And they do a lot of cool veteran stuff. I actually got to go on a veterans turkey hunt in Montana in April that they collaborated with another nonprofit called PB Abate, Patrol Base Abate, that they went out. We camped in Montana and turkey hunted. So that was a neat thing.
That was pretty cool.
I hadn't been to Montana before, but I can tell you that Montana turkeys behave a lot more like Missouri turkeys. You just got to get used to the different landscape.
Yeah.
But it was neat. So I've gotten to do that with BHA and the Armed Forces side, and I'm not in the Armed Forces chapter. I'm in the Missouri chapter, but they still open that stuff up to veterans, and that was a great experience.
Yeah.
What's the collegiate, the pillars? Is it, so I was looking at, so we do the collegiate program, and maybe just the pillars stood for.
Are you talking the R3?
I was thinking like actual pillars, but maybe that's because when I was looking at a picture, they were building something. So in my mind, I was thinking like pillars. They were putting in pillars or something like that. But maybe the pillars was like a metaphor for like, something.
I'm not familiar
I know
with
you
that
brought
one.
up the Armed Forces one.
Yep.
The R3 was another program.
Yeah, and that's not just a BHA thing. That's a hunting organizations nationally is, well, fundamentally what we see decrease, you're seeing a decrease in hunting. One of the key drivers of that is loss of land to hunt. So again, that's where BHA fits that position of trying to keep accessibility for hunting, which helps keep numbers up for hunters and anglers. But it's retention. I'd have to Google this one, but it's essentially retaining the hunters we have, recruiting new hunters into the sport. The late onset hunters, as many we hear.
The adult onset
adult onset, adult onset hunting.
Reactivation.
And then reactivation. That's the one. Thank you. So the ones who hunted, maybe they, lost that family farm. It got sold or whatever. And so, how do we bring them back in or find new ways to hunt? And so that's an initiative that many outdoor organizations, conservation departments are all working to work and strive towards. And so BHA is a part of that. And so, that's one thing we do put a lot of our events towards is we welcome the experienced hunters and anglers, and we welcome the ones who maybe haven't done it and they're trying to learn more. Like I hunted here in Missouri, but through BHA, because of the experience and the people I've met, I was able to take that knowledge and make the right connections to actually go and do my first Wyoming hunt, which was, something that's just like always an abstract, maybe someday thing, but I never was in a position to turn it into reality until I found a hunting partner to head into the backcountry for 10 days with. So, it just comes and shows up in different forms, but we do put a lot of effort into that.
For sure.
And I like mentoring adult hunters, honestly. I'd rather take an adult out than a kid, personally. But I don't have kids. I don't like kids that much. So I'd rather take an adult out. And I have a lot of fun doing that. I like it. I like mentoring adults and teaching them stuff that, like, I grew up with. And sometimes it just doesn't cross my mind that other people don't see it the same way I do.
Right.
And it's fun to illustrate and show that.
Well, and you think about getting someone into hunting, your first thought is not to seek out an adult that hasn't gotten into it. Your first thought, I'm going to go get the next kid, that maybe lost a father or, just never got into it, never had the opportunity. But there's adults, too, that, maybe they want to get into it. They just have never done it, and they're this far along now, and it's like, I don't know what to do.
Yep. And the whole field to table movement has influenced that a lot. People want to find their own food and learn how to cook. So.
Yeah.
I found your collegiate program pillars, so you weren't
okay.
off topic. That is a thing.
Okay.
We just weren't familiar because we don't have any collegiate programs in Missouri. So if you're out there and you're in college and you're interested, let us know, and we'll get you working on a collegiate program.
Yeah.
But anyway, they have 5 pillars. It's community, and that's our public lands and waters are best shared with friends. Stewardship, protecting our public lands for future generations. Education and advocacy, empowering tomorrow's conservation leaders. Inclusivity, public lands and waters are for everyone. And adventure, which is find your backcountry. And those are the collegiate pillars, but honestly, something
Gotcha.
like BHA
So
as a
that's
whole
what
is we
it's
feel
like
strongly about.
The pillars of
Where we talk about
what it
R3, that's
stands
what
for.
college is talking about. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yep, that makes sense.
So you were not way off track on that. You did see that.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, just for outdoor, for conservationists, for getting more people into it. This is one way to do it. If you want to volunteer with BHA or go to a pint night or go help with the cleanup, or even if it's not with BHA, but if you just you can Google anything and they do conservation cleanups, and they're always looking for help doing stuff like that. And and I would encourage anybody out there, if someone's wanting to get into hunting, to start a connection there and see if you can help them out. or the kid that's got the single mom that, needs, someone to help him get out there. Mom not really into the hunting and dad, passed away or whatever the case may be. But yeah, BHA is one way to get into all those things. And, if you're an outdoor enthusiast, and not just hunting, we're just, everything, camping, hiking, fishing, all of it, we're all on the same boat on wanting to keep access to public land and keeping it clean and keeping it, the old adage, right? Leave it better than the way when you leave. So, one thing I wanted to bring up real quick that I touched base on you, and this is a Missouri issue too, that we kind of talked about real quick, but was the 4 parks, and it's still kind of an issue. But so in 2017, so Jay Nixon was the governor at the time. So before he left, he spearheaded a deal to get to purchase. I think it was just over 9,000 acres of to become state public parks. And when he left, Eric Greitens became the next governor. Well, he had the scandal deal and then subsequently was gone within a year. But while he was there, he put a stop to the Jay Nixon opening up that park.
He put a stop to all 3 parks.
And postponed indefinitely the other 3. So 4 total parks. And they're still sitting, well, the last I checked, so the 3 are Jay Nixon State Park, Ozark Mountain State Park, Bryant Creek State Park, and then 11 Point State Park. One of the things you all brought up, or at least that I was able to read, is, the acquisition of the land for public excuse me, is done. So the hard part, it's like, it's awesome. We've got it. Now we just open it up and figure out a way to maintain it. And he put a stop to that.
Well, and there were some efforts in some of those regions to actually force that sale of those parks, which fortunately that never really took traction, because otherwise, again, loss of public land. It was private, opportunity to purchase it for the public benefit. But yeah, a couple of those now are all in they call it a CDP, conceptual development planning is what we've understood them to be at, which is a good sign. Sometimes those development plans take time, and also the raising of funds and allocating money to that, because you have to maintain the parks you have and then also be able to fund the new parks that you're looking to roll and open up.
Yeah, something to, keep an eye on.
But touching on
while it's out there.
Yeah, touching on those. Gosh, I was looking recently. Iowa. This is in a number of states, but close to home here in Missouri, Iowa and Kansas. There's been legislative efforts to actually limit or prevent the ability for conservation agencies, parks departments to actually purchase any public land. So that's one thing you have to be on the lookout for. Is we always want to be able to capture opportunity to increase and add public land for the use of the public, and so trying to keep an eye and keep on top of any legislative efforts that may move towards removing that right or that ability is a thing that we are always advocating for as well.
And a piece of that for MDC is MDC is not state controlled. It's a state agency, but they have their own board. Like the House of Representatives, the governor can't tell MDC what to do. There have been movements lately to try to get MDC under state control, which is honestly bad for us, because MDC is focused on conservation and wildlife and public land because it's for us. MDC wants to keep 11 Point and Jay Nixon. They want to keep all these things that the state has talked about selling. So MDC is on our side on this one. Is like, we don't want MDC under state control. We want them to maintain their individuality and their independence to really focus on what we want them to focus on, and not what the bureaucrats and the politicians necessarily care more about.
Yeah, ultimately a move. MDC, Missouri, we have one of the best conservation models in the United States. 0.1% of any purchase in Missouri goes to conservation efforts. Goes to the Department of Conservation. Yep. The reason for that is because we nearly extirpated a lot of our wild game back in the early, I believe it was in the 20s and 30s. And so through the community, through the state, people decided we need to put the right model in now to fund and bring back our population, our deer, our turkey. Gosh, even like raccoon was nearly extirpated, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But through that,
Dang.
They need a little help the other direction now.
Yeah,
I,
no.
I listened to your wild turkey
For
podcast on the way up here.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But that said,
So
that
many
model has
raccoons.
been in place for so long that we are positioned very well to have public, conservation areas and things like that. But if we were to move the funding and the oversight away from the Department of Conservation to our state legislature, we're politicizing conservation. We're politicizing wildlife management. And so when it gets, again,
Right.
stuck in bureaucracy of that degree,
Yeah.
that's not really something we want, where depending on who gets voted in office, we're going to see a good move of habitat or a negative move or wildlife and things like that.
Yeah. We need access, Chandler.
Yeah. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the social channels.
Yeah. That's a good way to keep up on.
Because the moment something happens,
We try to get it out.
you guys kind of get it out, and that's when all these Missouri
Right.
hunters and anglers and hikers and everybody fishing,
Yeah.
we gotta do something about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And have you had the chance to join yet? I put that as a close second.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Sign
yeah.
up.
Yeah, sign up, join. You join whatever state you're in. Money from your membership. You live in Kansas. You live in Kentucky. You live in that state. You join. Your money goes towards that state chapter, with some funds obviously going towards the national organization. But they do a very good job of keeping it close to home. So when we have issues popping up locally, we can draw on those funds. We can draw on that money to actually try and have a positive impact.
Yeah.
We do a lot of like the free gift membership drives. I don't know what's going right now, but you'll get the free
Yeah.
T-shirt or the free Nalgene
Water bottle,
bottle.
yeah.
Or,
Gotcha.
we get some of those, so
Yeah.
definitely keep an eye out for those as well if you're looking for a little bit freebie, because we do those pretty often. I just don't know what we got going right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you're in Missouri, you can find Instagram and Facebook. Just look up Missouri BHA.
Yep, Backcountry
Yep.
Hunters and Anglers.
And then obviously you can go to their website,
Yeah.
MissouriBackcountry.org, I believe.
Yes,
I wrote it down.
backcountryhunters.org.
Yeah,
And then just
backcountryhunters.org.
go to backcountryhunters.org. There's an interactive map right on the landing page. You can scroll through, you can click on your state. It's going to surface up chapter, who's involved in the chapter. It's going to surface up issues. So any issues that are facing in your state, you're going to be able to have access right there. And yeah, you look on whatever social media you're on. Here in Missouri, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Other states may be more, have the TikTok or Snapchat or other ones like that. We don't have that here. We do just
Yeah.
do the primary too.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
I'm not volunteering to do it either.
Yeah.
But everybody can, I would encourage everybody to check it out, especially the social media pages. Then you can keep up on, stuff as it's coming up then. And if you have stuff that you maybe need to report or maybe need to talk about, you can reach out as well, to see if it's something that BHA needs to get behind.
Yep.
No.
Things like that. But it's definitely a worthwhile organization to check out, and if you're wanting access to all this public land. So, I think they're on the forefront of trying to keep all that available.
Yep.
Be interesting to see what else comes about from the corner crossing thing. That'll be something to keep an eye on. See if some of these public parks that should be open, and I don't know why they're not yet. We're 6 years now removed from the acquisition of it, and it's like, what's going on? So let's get that wrong. The Swan Lake is going to be a
Yep.
big one.
Yep.
That's going to be a buzz come duck season.
Yeah. Bridges.
Yep.
Yep.
So, this is good stuff. Worthwhile. Make sure you check them out, Missouri BHA, or check them out at backcountryhunters.org. And then also, spreading this video so people can check it out. So you can, make sure you find us on our Rogers YouTube channel and Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube, and if you could share the episode with everybody and
Get the word out.
Get that word out. So I do appreciate it. I know we worked on it a little bit trying to find time to get in here with everybody's schedule, so it finally worked out.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, really appreciate it with you guys.
We'll keep in touch, and one of these nights we'll get everybody to join the pint night.
Yep.
Sounds great.
So we can talk some hunting stories.
Oh yeah.
That's
We've
right.
got them. I've
That's
got
right.
them at least.
Yeah. I got plenty of stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry about that. So again, Casey, Ryan, appreciate it. Check them out. Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And until next time, we will see you later.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I think it's time for me